Section 1. The Loss and the Loneliness. Life before tragedy always feels brighter in memory. I still remember the mornings when my husband would brew coffee before the sun had even risen, the smell drifting through the house like a promise of a new day. We weren't perfect, but we were steady, and in that steadiness I felt safe. We shared laughter, small disagreements, and countless ordinary moments that together formed the fabric of a life built on love and trust. Then came the day when it all unraveled. His sudden passing was like a door slamming shut in the middle of my life. One moment, I had a partner who walked beside me. The next, I was alone in a house that seemed far too big, far too quiet. People talk about grief like it's a storm, wild and violent, but for me it was more like a heavy fog that settled in and refused to lift. Every room echoed with absence. His chair stood untouched, his shoes by the door, as if he might return at any moment, but of course, he never did. In the beginning, I tried to keep busy. I threw myself into chores, into tasks that didn't really matter because sitting still meant confronting the truth. Nights were the hardest. The bed felt like a cold expanse, and silence pressed down on me so thickly that even the ticking of the clock became unbearable. Friends visited, family called, but their voices could only carry me so far. When they left, the emptiness swallowed me again. It was during one of those endless evenings that I found myself wandering outside, drawn to the stables almost without thinking. My horse had been with us for years, more of a companion animal than anything else, but I hadn't truly noticed him in the chaos of morning. That night, I stood there brushing his mane, listening to the soft sound of his breathing. For the first time since my husband's death, I felt a sliver of calm. The horse didn't speak, didn't offer condolences, didn't tell me to stay strong. He simply existed, solid, patient, alive. And in that silence, I found something words could not give me, a reminder that life still pulsed quietly around me, even if my own felt shattered. Soon, the stable became my refuge. Each morning, I would walk out, feed him, and lose myself in the rhythm of grooming, cleaning, and riding. It became a ritual, a way to fill hours that otherwise felt unbearably long. My horse became a partner in grief, carrying me through trails where the air was fresh and the world felt momentarily untouched by sorrow. On his back, I could breathe again, even if only for an hour at a time. Yet beneath that fragile sense of peace, the ache lingered. Every ride, every brushstroke, carried the weight of absence. My husband's memory clung to me, and with it, the feeling that I had been left behind in a life I no longer recognized. The horse gave me company, yes, but he also reminded me of what I had lost, a partner who once filled the silence, now replaced by quiet hooves on the ground. In those early months, I learned that grief doesn't simply fade, it settles in, reshaping everything around it. But in the midst of that darkness, my horse became a constant, silent, steady, and waiting. And though I didn't realize it at the time, he was slowly leading me towards something I didn't yet know I needed, the courage to let companionship back into my life. Section 2. The Horse as a Silent Healer. As weeks turned into months, my bond with the horse deepened. What had once been a casual part of my routine grew into the foundation of my days. The simple act of walking into the stable, hearing him shuffle his hooves, and watching his calm eyes meet mine became a lifeline. Each morning, I would rise before dawn, when the world was still cloaked in quiet, and make my way outside. The air was often cool, carrying the scent of hay and damp earth. As I brushed his coat, my thoughts would wander to memories of my husband, how he used to watch me ride, how he'd joke that the horse seemed to understand me better than most people. Those memories hurt, but they also softened when paired with the steady rhythm of grooming. It was as if the horse absorbed some of my sorrow, grounding me when I felt adrift. Riding became more than exercise, it became therapy. Out on the trails, with trees arching overhead and birdsong filling the spaces where silence used to crush me, I could feel the tightness in my chest ease. The horse carried me forward when I didn't have the strength to carry myself. He didn't demand answers or decisions. He simply moved, step by step, reminding me that progress, however small, was still possible. But with this reliance came guilt. I began to wonder if it was healthy, this dependence on an animal for emotional survival. Friends urged me to seek out grief groups, to spend more time with people, but I resisted. With others, I felt pressure to explain, to respond, to pretend I was stronger than I really was. With my horse, there was no performance. There was only presence. Still, the loneliness lingered. On quiet evenings after I returned from a ride, I would sit in the dim light of the living room, surrounded by reminders of my husband. The photographs on the walls seemed to watch me, a constant reminder of promises made and a love that had been cut short. I often wondered if leaning on the horse so heavily was a way of avoiding the deeper truth, that I wasn't ready to let people back in. It was during one of these rides that I first noticed someone else paying attention. A stable hand, someone who had worked there casually for years, began offering small gestures, helping me with feed bags, fixing a loose gate, asking how I was holding up. At first, I brushed it off. My world was still wrapped tightly around loss, and I had no space for anything else. But over time, his presence became another quiet rhythm, almost as steady as the horse's. I didn't admit it to myself right away, but those moments planted a seed. While my horse gave me strength to breathe again, this person stirred something different, the possibility of warmth, of human connection. And with that possibility came confusion. Was it wrong to feel even a flicker of interest? Was it betrayal to my husband's memory to imagine companionship again? The horse had healed part of me by simply being there, carrying me through the weight of grief. But his steady presence also revealed the depth of what I was missing, a partner who could share more than silence, someone who could offer words, touch, and understanding beyond the stable walls. I didn't yet know where this path would lead, but I sensed that my journey through loss, guided by the quiet strength of my horse, was slowly pushing me toward a crossroad, between holding on to the past and daring to imagine a future. Crossing emotional boundaries. Grief has a way of blurring time. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, and before I knew it, nearly a year had passed since my husband's death. My routines had become predictable, mornings in the stable, afternoons lost in chores, evenings swallowed by silence. Yet within that pattern, small shifts began to take place, shifts I wasn't ready to admit to myself. The stable hand, whose presence had once felt peripheral, became harder to ignore. His kindness wasn't grand or intrusive. It showed itself in small acts. He'd tighten a strap on the saddle before I mounted, bring fresh water buckets when mine were empty, or lingered just long enough to make sure I was managing. These gestures, though ordinary, carried weight in my fragile state. I found myself anticipating his company, noticing when he wasn't around, and feeling a strange comfort when he was. At first, I convinced myself it was harmless. After all, wasn't it natural to crave connection after months of isolation? Yet there was an unease that accompanied those thoughts. Every time I caught myself smiling at his words, or allowing my gaze to linger longer than necessary, guilt crashed over me. My husband's face would surface in my mind, as if watching silently, reminding me of vows once made and a love once lived. But temptation is subtle. It doesn't arrive as a storm. It seeps in like a slow drip, softening the edges of resistance until they crumble. Our conversations grew longer. They started with casual remarks about the horses, the weather, the work at the stable. Soon, they deepened into talks about life, loss, and the strange ways people find strength. He listened without judgment, without offering cliches, and that alone felt like a lifeline. It was during one of those evenings, when the air was cool and the stable lights cast soft shadows, that I realized I had crossed an invisible boundary. We stood close, closer than two people needed to be, and in that nearness, I felt the warmth of another human presence, a warmth I had been starved of since my husband's passing. My chest tightened with both longing and fear. Longing because I craved it. Fear because accepting it felt like betrayal. Was it truly betrayal, though? My husband was gone. There would be no angry confrontation, no wounded voice accusing me of disloyalty. The conflict was entirely within me, a war between memory and desire, between loyalty to the past and hunger for the present. That night, as I walked back to my empty home, I realized that the word infidelity doesn't always require a living partner. Sometimes, it's about breaking faith with the ghosts we carry, choosing life when we promised never to let go of loss. The horse remained my confidant through all this turmoil. Riding gave me clarity, though not answers. On his back, I could feel my heart wrestle with the contradictions of wanting two impossible things: to honor the love I had lost and to embrace the chance of love again. Each ride felt like a confession whispered into the air, a search for forgiveness in the rhythm of hoofbeats. The truth became impossible to deny. I was standing at a crossroads. One path led backward, into a life defined by grief, memory, and loyalty to someone who could no longer return my devotion. The other led forward, uncertain but alive, toward companionship and the possibility of healing through connection. Both paths carried pain. Both carried risk. And standing still was no longer an option. Section 4. Acceptance and moving forward. In time, I realized that healing isn't about replacing what's lost. It's about learning to carry it differently. The horse had been my anchor through the storm, keeping me grounded when the waves threatened to pull me under. But even anchors cannot become destinations. They can only steady you long enough to find your own direction. I began to accept that my late husband's memory wasn't a prison sentence. He had loved me, and in that love there had been laughter, support, and joy. Would he truly want me to remain forever frozen in sorrow? Or would he have wanted me to find light again, even if it came from another source? Asking myself these questions softened the guilt that had haunted me. Slowly, I began to see that moving forward was not a betrayal, but a continuation of the life he had once encouraged me to live fully. The man from the stable didn't pressure me, and for that I was grateful. His presence was steady, much like my horse's, but with a difference only a human could bring: words, warmth, and a reminder that I was still capable of being seen and valued. The connection grew quietly, without urgency, and in its gentleness I found room to breathe. Yet the horse never lost his place. If anything, my bond with him deepened further. He had carried me through my darkest nights, offered silent companionship when no one else could reach me, and given me the courage to step into uncertain light. When I rode now, it wasn't only to escape the weight of grief, but also to celebrate the resilience I had discovered along the way. Acceptance came in small steps, not a single revelation. It came when I laughed for the first time without immediately feeling guilt. It came when I shared a meal with the stable hand and realized that the world didn't collapse around me. It came when I understood that love isn't a finite resource, that my heart could hold memories of my husband while still making space for new connections. The word infidelity had haunted me for months, but in truth, it was never about betrayal. It was about permission to live, to love, to let go of the chains of grief without letting go of the love itself. My loyalty to my husband's memory would always remain, but loyalty didn't mean imprisonment. It meant honoring what we had while allowing myself to continue the story of my own life. Standing at the stable one evening, I brushed my horse's mane and whispered a quiet thank you. He had given me more than companionship. He had given me strength to face the darkest parts of myself and to find hope where I thought none remained. Now, as I look forward, I carry both gratitude and humility. Gratitude for the years I had with my husband. Gratitude for the silent strength of my horse. Gratitude for the unexpected kindness of someone who reminded me that life still holds meaning. And humility in knowing that grief doesn't end. It transforms, shaping us into people who can endure loss while still daring to embrace love again. In the end, my story is not about choosing between past and future, but about weaving them together. My horse will always remain by my side, a symbol of survival. My husband will always live in my heart, a symbol of love. And I, with all my scars and hopes, will continue forward, learning that companionship, in all its forms, is what makes life bearable, even after the deepest loss.